Calling 911.
I need a police and ambulance, please. My husband and we got an argument tonight and they shot him.
Is he breathing?
No.
I said, what happened? Jenny shot Drew last night.
I think she got mad, and she shot him.
Jenny, you have the right to remain silent and not make any statement at all.
My name is Jenny Eisenman, and I've agreed to talk today because I think my story needs to be heard. Drew was a coach, I was a teacher, so it was a good match.
Jenny is the sweetest, most soft-spoken, gentle person you could ever meet. Everyone loved her, teachers, students. I'm Shauna Sullivan, and I met Jenny when she came to work at Thompson.
You know, the best way I can describe Drew Eisenman is he was just a great guy. A devoted coach, a good teacher, and family meant everything to Drew.
That over the years, it's like he almost switched into a different person, a person I didn't know.
I believe it was the day she came back from maternity leave. She had tears in her eyes, and she said, Drew and I are getting a divorce. He's been having an affair the whole time I've been pregnant.
The birth of his child was a really joyous occasion for him, and he wanted to share it with the woman he loved. Unfortunately, that wasn't Jenny. That was Michelle.
Jenny told me she had a picture. My goodness, the mistress coming up and holding the baby. She said, look at her holding my baby, my son. That made her a little bit angry.
Anger and humiliation are very powerful emotions. My name is Mia Magnus, and I'm an assistant district attorney in Harris County, Texas.
The day everything happened, we went up into the apartment because we needed to talk. I filed for divorce. I wanted to leave, and I let him know. That's when Drew really lit it to me. He really lost control, and I fell to the floor. I curled up in the fetal position, and he was kicking my hands and my legs. I was scared. I was scared for my life. I had a gun that my brother had given me. So I fired a warning shot into the wall. I told him to get out again. And that's when he lunged, and it happened so fast. Even though I hate what happened, I feel like I defended myself that night.
I think she's clever. I don't know what else to say except that I'm not buying it.
Trigger Point, tonight's 48 Hours Mystery. The mystery continues in 90 seconds.
It wasn't a doubt who shot him. She made that very clear from the get-go. I shot my husband.
When detectives Larry Davis and Mark Reynolds arrived at Jenny Eisenman's apartment in May 2004,
we expect to see a homicide scene.
they were in for two surprises.
You walked into this apartment and it was pristine. Looked like nothing had happened there. There's no holes in the slipcovers, no blood on the slipcover.
That's weird.
That's weird. That's not right.
That was the first surprise. There was no blood. There was no body.
I was looking for the deceased male.
Jenny was there, sitting quietly on the couch.
She was pretty matter-of-fact, pretty composed.
Jenny and Drew's 8-month-old baby, Jackson, was in his crib. It was just like nothing happened, just like the slender second-grade teacher hadn't just shot and killed her husband, the high school basketball coach.
What's your gut telling you at that point?
There's a story here.
The story would start to unravel soon. But first, the police had to answer the big question. Where was Drew's body?
She told the officers, he's outside, he's downstairs.
They searched for Drew's body all around the apartment complex.
I was looking for a dead male. You know, I was by the truck, laying on the ground next to the truck.
And eventually, they found him, right under their feet.
He was in a tub next to his truck. I walked right by him. I wasn't looking for one in a tub.
It was the second surprise of the night. Drew's bloody body was stuffed inside a green storage tub, the same one used to store the family Christmas tree. So how did a slight 120-pound woman kill a man nearly twice her size and drag his body down a flight of stairs to the curb? And more importantly, why? What drove her to it? What really happened in apartment 2128 the night Jenny shot Drew?
What's your full name?
Jenny Eisenman.
Okay.
The police whisked Jenny away to the police station. The baby was turned over to Jenny's sister, Carrie, while his mother was being interrogated.
We knew how we wanted to question her.
Are you hungry?
We knew what we wanted out of her.
You want to go use the restroom?
We knew what we felt was important in that interview.
When did you first meet Drew?
Wrapped up in a blanket, she told detectives she didn't need a lawyer and proceeded to tell them quite a tale about a fight that night and everything that led up to it.
I wanted to start from the very instance that they met.
When I first met Drew, we were in college. It was a storybook romance. Drew was athletic, a very beautiful human being, fun to be around, and very charming.
Tell me about the first time you met him.
Oh, she just brought him home and said, here he is.
Jenny's parents, Vonda and Jim Harvey, remember the happy times when she and Drew first met.
I like Drew, tall, good-looking guy. He can be very charismatic, and he was.
What were they like together when you saw them?
They seemed just very content and happy.
She was part of our lives almost from the very beginning.
And the Eisenman family, especially Drew's parents, Tom and Becky, were delighted when their son married Jenny.
Seemed very compatible, shared an interest in education and children.
What was it like to be in her class?
Kind of like being in a sanctuary or something.
Connor Carrizales was one of Jenny's second-grade students.
Did you ever see Miss Eisenman lose her temper?
No. She had a high tolerance of being mad. I think we had like 30 kids in there. She could take all of them at once.
Connor's mother had to explain to her son, who was then just 8 years old, what his favorite teacher was accused of.
She would never do something like that. It's just not the way she is. Not the way I know her, at least.
And just as Jenny's students loved her, Drew's students looked up to him.
He was always a person that pushed us. He taught me not to quit.
He had a big heart, man. He had a big heart. You can't just forget about people like that, you know. I'm always remember him. Always. Always.
Everyone who knew Drew and Jenny was shocked when they heard what happened. Jenny's parents were out of the country when her brother reached them the night of the shooting.
He said, Drew's gone. What do you mean Drew's gone? She shot him. Drew's dead.
It's not that she just shot him. I mean, she emptied a gun on him.
She robbed Drew of everything. Robbed him of the rest of his life.
AJ and Annette Eisenman considered their brother Drew one of the centerpieces of the family.
He was always just ready to help somebody. Loved to laugh. Great sense of humor.
But Jenny told police she had to shoot Drew that night.
He came at me, and then he fell back, and then he kind of got up like to come at me again.
She says it was self-defense. They were separated, the divorce was getting ugly, they argued, and he attacked her.
She shot until she couldn't shoot anymore.
You kept pulling until the weapon quit, right?
6 gunshots in that apartment was loud.
I knew that there were going to be sirens. I knew that someone would have heard the shots.
But no one came. Jenny did not call 911, not for hours. Instead, she told police she started to tidy up.
I didn't want it to be awful when people came over. I knew they would know what I'd done, but I
The biggest problem was what to do about Drew's body.
I didn't know what to do. He was on my couch, and I was freaked out. So I have a green tub.
She put him into that tub and covers him, some blankets, child's toys, kids' toys.
And Jenny Eisenman decided to drag her husband's body, now stuffed inside that storage tub, out of the apartment and down the stairs.
You drug him down the stairs to the truck.
As strange as it sounds, Jenny said she planned to take Drew's body to the police station. But there was one problem.
She couldn't lift him. She could not lift him and load him in the truck.
And there were people in the apartments that walked by and offered to help.
Are you sure I can't help you out with this box? I'll help you put it in right now. She goes, no, no, no.
Danny Martin was moving into his new apartment that night.
Every time I'd run by, I'd say, hey, how you doing? Good. And he's like, I hate moving. She's like, oh, tell me about it.
The next day, Danny Martin heard what was really going on.
Did it occur to you that maybe there was her dead husband was in the box?
Absolutely not. I didn't have a clue.
And at first, Jenny didn't have a clue about how much trouble she was in.
Do I going to go to jail?
I don't know that yet.
Okay. Without an attorney present, I just talked.
I didn't believe a word she said.
Not any of it.
I did not believe a word she said.
And that was before they found out there was something Jenny didn't say.
Emotionally, she did not come across as being very distraught.
After telling police she shot and killed her husband, Drew,
Did you have anything to read or just to do?
How about a People magazine?
this is how Jenny Eisenman passed the time.
She wants something to read. It's awful boring in that little room. Are you hungry? Yeah.
Something out of the snack machine, okay?
I can get you a cherry pie and a Coke. Sounds good to me.
I'll go get you some napkins, okay?
It showed the real Jenny at the time.
Who's able to do that? Who's able to go through a traumatic event like this and actually have an appetite?
Prosecutor Mia Magnus found Jenny's behavior odd.
You would think that that would be the furthest thing from her mind, to have a little snack.
But what really got the prosecutor's attention was what Jenny did immediately after shooting Drew.
What did she do next?
Well, she went shopping.
Jenny went to Walmart about an hour after she killed Drew. It was a shopping trip she failed to mention to police.
She didn't tell us about Walmart. I mean, the way that we found out about Walmart was just through some really good police work.
Detectives Mark Reynolds and Larry Davis found evidence of Jenny's shopping trip in her apartment.
We find the check to Walmart.
Walmart still had surveillance video, which shows Jenny walking through the store with Jackson along for the ride. She had made a shopping list, and the store provided a detailed receipt. And what she bought was, to say the least, suspicious.
White paint, her interior walls are white. Brown paint, the exterior walls are brown. Plastic trash bags, spackling. I think it was my partner that came up calling that the Little Miss Killer kit.
Well, what would her Little Miss Killer kit allow her to do?
Cover up a crime scene.
And Jenny bought one more thing that night, a gas can. Detectives think they know what she was going to do with that.
Had she been able to get him into the truck, him and his vehicle were going to end up burned. She was going to hope that the police thought it was just a vehicle accident of some sort.
She didn't want to get caught. She didn't want for anyone to find out what she had done.
It's hard to explain. She herself can't fully explain.
Even her parents, Vonda and Jim Harvey, who have never doubted Jenny shot Drew in self-defense, can't make sense of her behavior afterwards.
She had a list of the things she had to buy at Walmart. She went and she did it very rationally, took the baby.
But who knows how you're going to react when you've been through a traumatized situation.
I was in such shock that the Walmart incident occurred, and I can't even attempt to explain it because none of it makes any sense, but it was almost like I was just going through the motions.
Police didn't believe her for a minute. They arrested Jenny Eisenman that night.
How did she react?
Arrested? For what?
The charge was murder. A judge released her on $30,000 bail until trial.
I remember I talked to her on the phone before the trial, and she said, Shauna, you know me, and you know I would never hurt anybody. I was just defending my life and the life of my son.
Shauna Sullivan believes Jenny must have been in serious danger when she shot Drew.
I don't believe for a second she did it out of anger. It had to be self-defense.
It was only after the killing that Jenny started talking openly about what she says was a secret she kept about her marriage, that Drew was abusing her. She agreed to make a statement to 48 Hours only if we agreed not to ask her direct questions. It was the only way she would consent to tell her side of the story. And she says behind closed doors, Drew was a controlling, demanding, sometimes violent husband. Not at all the kind, caring man people thought he was.
About 6 months into our marriage is when the first real incident occurred.
Jenny says she first saw Drew's dark side early in their marriage, when she left their dog outside against Drew's wishes.
He backhanded me, and it just kind of took me back. I didn't know how to react to that.
According to Jenny, the first few times Drew hit her, he apologized and promised it would never happen again.
He was always big about appearances, appearing like we were this perfect, happy couple.
But Jenny now says, as time went on, she was becoming more and more isolated.
Slowly but surely, I began stepping back from my family, and not only my family, but my friends as well.
The more we pushed her for answers, the more she pushed us away.
Still, some of Jenny's good friends, like Joy Rickey, began to notice some changes in her.
She'd become so skinny, and she barely spoke above a whisper.
One evening, Joy says she noticed some bruises on Jenny and asked her about them.
Jenny, did Drew give those to you? And she said, no, I told you I ran into something. And she just really wouldn't look at me.
Did you believe her when she said, no, I just ran into something?
No. I mean, obviously now I wish I had pushed it a little bit more than I did.
Jenny now says the abuse continued throughout her marriage and escalated to a new level of violence in 2002, when Drew read some email exchanges between her and a male friend.
He accused me of having an affair on him, which could not be farther from the truth. He was just so irrational and so out of control that several times he hit me, pushed me down. At one point took my head and slammed it into the floor.
It was one of the few times, Jenny says, that there was evidence of the abuse she was suffering.
He kicked an enormous hole in the wall.
I remember seeing a hole in a wall, and I remember asking about it, and them saying that Drew had gotten angry and hit the wall.
Ron Watson was a close friend of Drew's, so close he named one of his children after him. And he says after that fight, Drew admitted to him that things had gotten violent.
He admitted to pushing her against the wall or shoving her against the wall. He admitted to getting physical with her. That was the word he used.
Jenny says Drew abused her sexually, too. And Jenny says in the midst of all that abuse, while she was pregnant, she found out about the other woman.
I'd found receipts with her name on them from times they'd gone out to lunch.
She was Michelle Weaver, a girls' basketball coach at Drew's school at the time. And when Jenny read Drew's emails, she learned things had gone way beyond just having lunch.
Very intimate emails, talking about how they loved each other and about things they'd done.
Drew denied the affair at first, but Jenny met Drew's mistress.
Do not bring her in here. Do not do that to me.
At the worst possible time. On September 9th, 2003, Jenny Eisenman became a mother. Her baby, Jackson, was healthy, but Jenny's happiness didn't last long.
Pretty much just begged him, do not bring her in here. Do not do that to me.
The day after the birth of their son, Jenny's husband Drew brought some friends to Jenny's hospital room. One of them was his mistress, the girls' high school basketball coach, Michelle Weaver.
They walked into the room, and I'm sitting there just horrified and trying to keep it together because this woman is sitting across from me. At one point, Drew came over and took Jackson from me, and he placed Jackson in her arms, and he got the camera and took a picture.
It was, according to Jenny, one of the most humiliating moments of her troubled marriage to Drew.
As soon as they left, I just fell apart because it hurt so much for that to happen, that he would do that to me.
But Drew's family says Jenny took that picture and put it in her scrapbook. His sister, Alyssa.
It strikes me as funny if it was such a painful moment and such a painful thing to see, why she would keep that in a scrapbook that was on their coffee table that she showed to everybody that came by.
5 months after Jackson was born, Jenny and Drew moved into separate apartments in the same complex. They wanted to stay nearby so Jackson could grow up with both his parents. But while Jenny and Drew were close geographically, emotionally, the marriage was over.
I wasn't trying to take his son. I wasn't trying to take anything from him. I just wanted out.
Remember, Jenny agreed to make a statement to us only if we agreed not to ask her direct questions. And here, in her own words, is how she describes what happened the night Drew came to her apartment, the night she shot him.
And upon seeing his face, when I entered the door, I should have known at that point just to turn around and go. I should have known, but I didn't. Because it was my home, my apartment.
Jenny says Drew rifled through her apartment and discovered that she had copies of cell phone records and romantic emails between him and Michelle. It was proof of the affair that she says Drew was desperate to keep secret from everyone, even his own family.
He realized everything was about to become exposed, and he just became unglued.
She says she put Jackson in a back bedroom to shield him from the fight.
Captain Drew really did it to me. I asked him several times to leave my home, and he would not leave. And when I tried to get to the door, that's the first time he pushed me down.
But the worst was yet to come. Jenny says in the midst of the fight, she told Drew she might be pregnant again. Remember, she says he was forcing himself on her regularly.
And for someone who was already on the edge, he really lost it. And that's when he proceeded to really kick me. I curled up in the fetal position, and he was kicking my hands and my legs, and I was just trying to protect my belly, and I was trying to protect my head. I was scared. I was scared for my life.
And she says she was also scared for her son because Drew made a threat to take Jackson away from her.
As a mother, when someone's like that, you're not going to let them leave a child.
The fight was escalating quickly.
At one point, he flipped the coffee table over. And I yelled at him to get out. And I told him I was calling the police. I told him to get out. But he wouldn't go. He wouldn't calm down.
That's when Jenny went for the gun her brother gave her.
And I told him to leave. And at first he kind of laughed it off. And then he said I could take that and use that on you.
According to Jenny, she stood in the living room of her apartment, pointing a loaded revolver at Drew, afraid for her life, afraid of what would happen next.
I was so scared. This was a whole nother level, something I'd never seen before.
And that was the moment, says Jenny, when she made her decision.
And I fired a warning shot. I told him to get out again, and that's when he lunged and everything happened, and it happened so fast. I remember falling to the floor in such pain and shock, and I'm rocking because I knew someone was going to come to the door. Someone had to have heard us arguing all night, but no one came.
Jenny's father, Jim Harvey, says these photos of Jenny's bruises prove she's telling the truth about what happened that night. He took these pictures a few days after the shooting and included a newspaper in the shots to try to prove when they were taken.
We believe those bruises are very consistent with a beating.
The police believe Jenny got those bruises while she was dragging the tub with Drew's body down the stairs from her apartment.
I think that she just very conveniently wove them into a story about what had happened.
To bolster her claim that she was pregnant the night of the shooting, Jenny claims she suffered a miscarriage a few weeks later. But the prosecutor and the police don't believe that either.
You think she was never attacked?
No.
Never beaten, never abused?
No.
And this stack of emails is a big reason why police doubted her. They were written around the same time Jenny claims Drew was sexually abusing her repeatedly. A few are flirtatious. In one, Drew writes, "You are a tease." Jenny responds, "I can do more than tease, a lot more."
It was pretty clear that she wanted a romantic relationship with him.
Drew's younger brother AJ believes his sister-in-law's story about rape and other abuse is nothing more than a collection of lies invented by a murderess.
Talking about a person that took a gun and killed someone, dragged a body down, tried to dispose of a body, and when that wasn't able to happen, sat there and lied to police. Does that sound like a credible person to anyone?
All of Drew's family insists he would never have harmed Jenny in any way.
Is it possible that he hit her once or twice?
No.
Absolutely
I
not.
don't believe that.
No, not in his character, it's not in his personality, not in his upbringing.
I think it certainly makes for a much better story if Jenny Eisenman was an abused woman. I don't accept that.
Now, prosecutor Mia Magnus has her work cut out for her.
Do not underestimate the intelligence of Jenny Eisenman.
She has to convince a jury that this second-grade teacher with no history of violence, whom practically everyone considered gentle and caring, is a scorned woman capable of cold-blooded murder.
I was scared. I was scared for my life. I feel like I defended myself that night.
People lie. Physical evidence doesn't. Jenny Eisenman murdered Drew Eisenman, and I intend to prove it to you.
Throughout Jenny's trial, the only mystery left is why she shot her husband.
She tells you, I was abused.
If she killed Drew in self-defense, it isn't murder.
She's lying to you. She wasn't terrified, she was angry.
Prosecutor Mia Magnus argues Jenny was angry enough to kill because Drew had threatened to take their son, Jackson.
By God, you're not taking my baby.
And then, according to Magnus, Drew, while staring down the barrel of Jenny's gun, made a fatal error.
He didn't hit her. He did something worse. He sat down and he laughed at her.
Jenny Eisenman suffered in silence.
Jenny's defense attorney Wayne Hill has a job no lawyer would envy.
Drew was demeaning and indifferent to her.
He has to convince a jury that Jenny was driven to violence by years of abuse, even though there's almost no hard evidence that Drew ever hit her.
Their marriage included emotional, physical, and sexual abuse.
But Jenny never reported any abuse to police, not once. She tried to explain why in the statement she made to us.
There's such shock that it happened in the first place. It's almost like you don't believe it really happened. And so after you don't report it the first time, each additional time after that, it just becomes habit. You become used to it. It's part of your marriage.
You just haul your dead husband down the stairs, and you're making an effort to load him into his own vehicle, where presumably you can drive him somewhere and burn him and his truck up And you can't go from there to the stretch that, hey, maybe she's lying about this domestic violence thing.
And Magnus thinks Jenny's own words prove she's lying. She wants the jurors to read those emails Jenny wrote to Drew.
Anyone who finally finds the courage to separate from their abuser does not speak to their abusers in emails in sexually suggestive ways.
They can't come to an agreement regarding custody, obviously.
Wayne Hill has an explanation. He says the emails are just part of a difficult negotiation between Jenny and Drew over custody of their son.
She tries to keep Drew calm during this time period.
But as difficult as it is to deal with those emails, Jenny's trip to Walmart just after she killed Drew is even harder to explain.
I'm going to hide evidence. I'm going to destroy evidence. When you are acting in self-defense, you don't have to burn the body.
She panics.
Jenny's attorney says she was in shock and desperate to keep Jackson from being taken away by authorities.
I have to protect him. So she goes and she covers up everything in that apartment.
It may be hard to believe, but experts in domestic violence say almost everything Jenny claims she did fits a pattern they've seen before. Even that trip to Walmart, they say, can be explained.
It may very well be that after she killed him, she was in shock. She knew what she had done at this point, and now she's got to do something to clean it up. It doesn't mean that he never abused her beforehand. It doesn't mean that they didn't get into a fight where she had to pull the gun on him. It doesn't mean that at all.
Shelby Moore is a law professor and an expert in domestic violence.
If you indeed leave some kind of a mark...
Professor Moore says many women never tell police when their husbands abuse them.
Women don't often tell until something tragic happens, or something serious happens, or the abuser almost kills her.
It's not something you want known, because I'm not like those women who get knocked around. I'm not. That's what you think. My husband is wonderful, and he just has these instances, and it's not all the time. And I love him.
That happens. And when that does happen, you have a woman in this woman's situation where nobody believes her because she chose not to speak about it.
Professor Moore wasn't involved in the case. In fact, Jenny's lawyer, who declined to be interviewed for this story, did not call one expert to explain Jenny's behavior. Instead, he called Jenny's friends and family, who appeared as character witnesses. The judge did not allow us to record audio of any testimony.
I love Jenny, and I support Jenny.
Jenny and Drew's friend, Ron Watson, also testified, but Watson was not allowed to testify about the potential bombshell, his claim that Drew told him he had gotten physical with Jenny. The judge ruled it was hearsay.
I asked him, I said, Drew, did you get violent, with Jenny? And he said, yeah, I was physical with her.
When Jackson is born, Michelle Weaver comes to the hospital and holds little Jackson in her arms.
Michelle Weaver took the stand and said she was reluctant to go into Jenny's hospital room. And she doesn't remember who put Jackson in her arms.
Horrible judgment on Drew's part. But does it make him a wife beater? It's not enough that she murdered him that night. Now she's murdering his reputation.
But the star witness was Jenny herself. Again, the judge didn't allow us to record the testimony, but hers was intense, emotional, and for the most part, uncorroborated. She told the jury what she told us.
It was not planned, never my wildest dreams would I have thought this could have happened that night.
That Drew had attacked her, and she had no choice but to shoot her husband.
What I was most concerned about was that she had come up with a heck of a story, and that the jury was going to buy it.
What took place in that apartment? Anger raging inside of Drew. He was pacing. He was pounding.
So then she gets the gun. What are you going to do with that, Jenny?
Jenny Eisenman acted in self-defense.
That is not self-defense. That is murder.
All right, for the jury.
Please be seated.
Was Jenny Eisenman forced to kill her husband Drew in self-defense?
She was on the floor. She was being kicked.
Or is she just a murderess with a made-up tale of abuse she hopes will convince people she had to kill?
Jenny Eisenman is manipulating you. Can you feel it?
Understand who Jenny is. She's a caregiver, teaches children.
Both sides have made their case, and the jury is about to decide Jenny's fate.
You see the daughter and you see her with her son, and you know how much they love each other, and you're thinking, this might end.
Since shortly after the killing, Jenny was out on bail. She and her son Jackson were living with her parents.
I have no doubt that my daughter was defending herself and her child.
Jenny's a liar.
But Drew's family is fighting to clear his name and hoping the jury will reject Jenny's portrayal of him as a wife beater.
Jenny understood, and she experienced firsthand, Drew's wrath.
The defense was pretty rough on Drew.
But throughout the trial, there was zero evidence to back up anything he was saying. Nothing has been proven. This is just what Jenny's saying.
But what will the jury think?
I just pray that the jury would see through it all and see the truth.
You hope and you pray that it comes back the way you want it to. And you just wait. Please be seated.
They didn't have to wait very long.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
The jury reached a verdict in just 90 minutes.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Jenny H. Eisenman, guilty of murder as charged in the indictment. Signed, the foreman of the jury.
Guilty as charged.
I'm going to recess the trial until 10 o'clock tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it'd tear you up, naturally.
My poor daughter, it's unfair.
Unfair because they insist there was evidence of abuse that the jury never heard.
I don't think there was enough evidence for me to conclude that she was abused.
After the trial, 7 members of the jury agreed to talk to us. If Jenny ever had a chance with these jurors, it was when they saw this picture.
Pretty much showed him to be a cad.
A cad.
Pretty rotten.
Did it make it easier for you to believe that he could have beaten her?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
He was quite possibly capable of doing just about anything.
That maybe it makes him a jerk, but not necessarily
big jerk.
an abuser. Correct.
But the jury didn't get to see all of the photos of Jenny's bruises that her father says were taken a few days after the shooting.
I think he might have kicked her that night. But it doesn't change what she did, and it doesn't change our decision.
And there was something else.
He admitted to pushing her against the wall or shoving her against the wall.
Remember, jurors were not permitted to hear Ron Watson's claim that Drew had told him he had gotten physical with Jenny.
Drew told him that he had slapped her around, and he wasn't allowed to say that to you. Would you have wanted to hear that?
Sure. Yeah, sure. To hear a close friend of Drew's say that, well, I think I would have had to weigh it a little bit more.
I don't know that I could have swayed them.
Juror Ann Roby says if she had known then what she knows now, it could have changed everything, because she could not have voted to convict.
What I now know, I don't think so. We probably would have been hung.
It could have been a hung jury.
I would have really held my ground.
While it only took an hour and a half to convict Jenny, it took nearly 7 hours to agree on a prison term.
I am pleading on behalf of Jenny Eisenman. I'm asking for probation.
I thought 5 years was probably appropriate.
She sat there and watched him die.
I was on the upper end, 75, 80 years.
It was a really hard decision for us to make.
But after deliberating